I never thought twice about being naked in my own space. My bedroom was my sanctuary, a place where I could breathe, shed the weight of the world, and exist without pretenses. That's why, when Morgan walked in unannounced, I wasn't just exposed physically. I was stripped bare in a way I hadn't expected. Morgan and I had been friends for years. The kind of friendship that thrived on inside jokes, late-night debates about nothing, and an unspoken ease in each other's presence. He was the guy who never judged, the kind who could navigate any social situation with effortless charm. Straight as an arrow, or so I'd always believed. He had a girlfriend, Emily, a long-term, picture-perfect relationship that I had observed from a comfortable distance. That night, it was just us in my apartment. He was crashing for the weekend after a sudden change of plans had left him without a place to stay. I didn't mind. It wasn't the first time he'd stayed over, but something about the air that evening felt different, charged in a way I couldn't name. Maybe it was the exhaustion in his voice, the way his eyes lingered a fraction longer than usual, or the fact that I had started noticing details about him I hadn't before. The way his lips curved slightly before he spoke, how his fingers absent-mindedly traced the rim of his glass when he was lost in thought. I told myself it was nothing. After a casual dinner, we settled into the living room, reminiscing about our college days, laughing about the reckless things we used to do. It felt good, easy. He stretched out on the couch, his arms resting behind his head, his shirt riding up slightly to reveal a hint of toned skin. I looked away, annoyed at myself for even registering it. At some point, exhaustion hit me, and I excused myself for a quick shower. The sound of the water was grounding, a momentary escape from my spiraling thoughts. Wrapped in nothing but a towel, I stepped into my dimly lit bedroom, the cool air raising goosebumps on my skin. The door swung open. Morgan stood there, mid-step, his hand still on the doorknob, frozen like a deer in headlights. My breath hitched. Neither of us moved. The moment stretched unbearably, time warping under the weight of unspoken words. He should have looked away. He should have muttered an apology and shut the door. But he didn't. His gaze flickered over me, quick, searching, but unmistakably lingering. A slow, almost imperceptible shift in his expression. Not shock, not embarrassment, something else. I clenched the towel tighter, my pulse hammering in my ears. "Morgan," I finally said, my voice strained. His lips parted slightly, as if he wanted to say something, but no words came. Then, just as suddenly as he had entered, he stepped back, clearing his throat. "Shit, sorry," I thought. He didn't finish his sentence. The door clicked shut, leaving me alone with my racing thoughts. I exhaled shakily, my mind a blur of confusion. That pause, that hesitation, what had it meant? Was it just an awkward mistake, or was I reading into something that wasn't there? As I dressed, I tried to shake the feeling that something had shifted in the air between us. Morgan wasn't just my straight best friend anymore. He was a puzzle I suddenly wasn't sure how to solve. And for the first time since I'd known him, I wasn't sure I wanted to. The air between us had shifted. It was subtle, but undeniable. Morgan wasn't acting like himself. He was quieter than usual, his usual effortless banter replaced by something more measured, more cautious. At first, I told myself I was imagining it, that I was the one projecting my own thoughts onto him, making something out of nothing. But the tension was there, thick, invisible, humming beneath the surface. I tried to shake it off. We acted like nothing had happened. At least, that was the unspoken agreement we seemed to make. He didn't bring up walking in on me, and I didn't ask why he'd hesitated before leaving. Instead, we settled into a forced normalcy, watching a random movie neither of us were really paying attention to, filling the silences with small talk that felt more like placeholders than actual conversation. But I noticed things. The way Morgan's knee bounced restlessly, a nervous habit I'd only ever seen when he was anxious. The way his fingers fidgeted with the hem of his hoodie, tugging, twisting. The way his eyes darted toward me when he thought I wasn't looking, only to snap away the second our gazes met. This wasn't nothing. At one point, I got up to grab a drink from the kitchen. When I turned back, I caught him staring. Not just looking, staring. It was quick, barely a flicker before he masked it with a cough and a sudden interest in his phone. But I'd seen it. The same lingering glance he'd given me in the doorway. And suddenly, I couldn't pretend anymore. "You okay?" I asked, my voice deliberately casual as I leaned against the counter. Morgan blinked, as if he'd been caught off guard. "Yeah, why?" I shrugged, taking a slow sip of my drink. "You just seem weird tonight." He let out a breathy chuckle, shaking his head. "Weird how?" I tilted my head, studying him. His posture was relaxed, but there was tension in his shoulders, a tightness around his jaw that told a different story. "I don't know," I said finally. "You tell me?" For a moment, I thought he'd deflect, brush it off like he always did. But instead, he leaned forward, elbows resting on his knees. His fingers laced together, knuckles turning slightly white from the pressure. He hesitated. Then, softly, he said, "Back in the room?" I didn't mean to walk in like that. I felt my grip tighten around the glass. "I know." Silence stretched between us, filled only by the low hum of the refrigerator and the distant sound of the movie still playing. "But," he continued, voice quieter now, "I didn't leave right away." My breath hitched. I wasn't sure if I wanted to hear what he was about to say. "I don't know why," he admitted. "I just froze." My heart pounded, a dangerous mix of curiosity and something far more volatile. "Morgan!" He exhaled sharply, rubbing a hand over his face. God, I sound like a fucking idiot. I forced a chuckle, but it came out shaky. "Yeah, a little." That made him laugh, but it was brief, almost sad. Then he looked at me, really looked at me, and suddenly, the space between us felt too small. My mind screamed at me to break the moment, to crack a joke, to steer us back into safer waters. But I didn't move. Neither did he. I swallowed hard. "You're straight," I reminded him, as much for myself as for him. Morgan's jaw tightened. His Adam's apple bobbed as he swallowed. "I know." And yet, neither of us moved. The tension was a living thing between us now. Tangible, electric, waiting for one of us to tip the balance. And maybe, just maybe, I wanted to see what would happen if we did. Morgan didn't move. Neither did I. The silence between us stretched, thick with something unspoken, something dangerous. The weight of his gaze burned into me. And in that moment, it didn't matter that he was straight, that he had a girlfriend, that this wasn't supposed to happen. All that mattered was the way my pulse thrummed in my throat, the way his breath came just a little too fast, and the undeniable truth hanging between us. He wanted this, even if he couldn't say it. He was the one who closed the space. A hesitant movement, his knee brushing mine, a flicker of indecision before his fingers twitched against the couch cushion. Testing. Waiting. I should have pulled away. I should have cracked a joke, laughed it off, done anything to stop this train before it derailed completely. But I didn't. Instead, I stayed perfectly still, letting the moment stretch, letting the weight of his indecision settle between us like an unspoken confession. His voice, when he finally spoke, was barely above a whisper. "I don't," he exhaled sharply, shaking his head. "I don't know what this means." I forced a smile, though my chest felt too tight. "It doesn't have to mean anything." A half-truth. A lie dressed up as reassurance. Because we both knew it meant everything. His fingers twitched again, closer this time. The warmth of his skin a whisper away from mine. And then, contact. A brush of his pinky against my hand. Fleeting, barely there, but enough to send a shiver up my spine. I turned to face him fully, heart hammering, and what I saw in his eyes nearly unraveled me. Fear. Desire. Guilt. "Morgan," I started, but he shook his head. And then, before I could say another word, he closed the gap completely. His lips were on mine, hesitant at first, almost unsure, but then the dam broke. His hands found my jaw, my hair, pulling me in like he was drowning, and I was the only thing keeping him afloat. I should have pushed him away, should have reminded him of Emily, of the life he had outside of this room. But the way he kissed me, desperate, searching, almost pained, made it impossible to think of anything but him. Somewhere in the back of my mind, I knew this wasn't real. That whatever this was, it wasn't something he could hold on to. But in that moment, none of it mattered. Because Morgan wasn't just kissing me. He was unraveling. And I was the only one who saw him come undone. Hashtag the guilt sets in. The moment it was over, reality crashed down like a tidal wave. Morgan pulled away first, his breathing ragged, his eyes wide with something dangerously close to regret. Shit, he whispered, running a hand through his hair. Shit. I didn't say anything. What could I say? He stood up abruptly, pacing the room like he could somehow outrun what had just happened. I shouldn't have done that. His voice was laced with panic now, like he was coming apart at the seams. I have a girlfriend. I love Emily. The words cut sharper than they should have. I swallowed, keeping my voice steady. I know. His hands curled into fists at his sides. Then why? He stopped himself, exhaling shakily. When he turned to face me, his expression was torn between desperation and something else I couldn't quite name. Tell me this doesn't mean anything. I opened my mouth. The words were right there. It doesn't mean anything. I could have said it, could have given him the easy out he was looking for. But I couldn't lie. Not this time. Instead, I looked him in the eyes and said the one thing neither of us wanted to hear. I don't think you can pretend this away, Morgan. He sucked in a sharp breath, like the weight of the truth had physically struck him. And for the first time since this started, he looked terrified. Not of me, not of what we'd done, but of himself. Hashtag the affair begins. I thought that kiss would be the end of it, that he'd leave, go back to Emily, and pretend nothing had ever happened. But it wasn't the end. It was just the beginning. Morgan started finding excuses to be alone with me, texting me late at night, showing up at my apartment under the guise of needing to talk. At first, I told myself it was nothing, that he was just confused, that he needed space to figure himself out. But space wasn't what he wanted. Every time we were alone, the tension coiled tighter, the lines between friendship and something more blurring until neither of us could see where one ended and the other began. The next time it happened, he didn't hesitate. His mouth was on mine before I could think, his hands gripping my waist like I was the only thing keeping him tethered to reality. We didn't talk about Emily. We didn't talk about what this meant. We just kept happening over and over, like an addiction neither of us knew how to quit. And the worst part? I didn't want to. Hashtag the emotional fallout. But secrets have a way of catching up to you. Morgan was unraveling, and I was watching it happen in real time. He wasn't sleeping. His hands shook when he spoke. He was distant with Emily, dodging her calls, making excuses, running from the inevitable. And yet, he kept coming back to me, like a moth to a flame, like a man on the edge of a cliff, desperate for something to hold on to before he fell. But I wasn't a safety net. I was the fall. And deep down, I think we both knew this wasn't going to end well. Secrets can only stay buried for so long. Morgan was slipping. I could see it in the way his shoulders tensed when his phone buzzed, the way his laughter felt forced when we were around other people, the way his eyes darkened whenever Emily's name came up. He was unraveling thread by thread, and I was the knife cutting through the last of his restraint. I should have ended it. I should have told him to walk away before everything came crashing down. But I didn't, because I was selfish, because I wanted him, even if it wasn't real, because for the first time, he was choosing me, even if he could never admit it. The night it all fell apart, I should have seen it coming. Morgan had shown up at my apartment, eyes stormy, hands stuffed into his jacket pockets like he was physically holding himself together. He didn't speak at first, just paced my living room, jaw clenched so tight, I thought he might shatter. Morgan, I started carefully. What happened? He stopped pacing, dragging a hand through his hair. His eyes flicked up to meet mine, and what I saw there made my stomach drop. Panic, guilt, finality. She knows. His voice was hoarse, barely above a whisper. The room felt smaller, like the walls were closing in. Emily? He nodded, exhaling sharply. I don't know how, but she knows. My heart pounded. What did she say? He laughed, but there was no humor in it. She asked me if I was cheating, and like a fucking idiot, I just stood there. I couldn't even lie. He let out a sharp breath, shaking his head. She knew before I even said anything. I swallowed, my throat dry. What did you tell her? He hesitated, then looked away. I told her it was a mistake. A mistake. The word lodged itself in my chest like a blade, sharp and unforgiving. I forced my voice to stay steady. Is that what this is to you? Morgan's head snapped up, eyes wide. No, I don't know. He let out a frustrated groan, hands gripping his hair. I don't know what to do. I wanted to scream at him, to make him choose. Instead, I whispered, do you love her? Silence. A long, painful silence that answered more than any words could. Then, quietly, he said, I don't know who I am without her. The confession hit me harder than I expected. Because that was the truth, wasn't it? He wasn't choosing me. He was running from himself. And I was just the place he had landed. Morgan didn't stay that night. He didn't kiss me, didn't touch me, didn't even look back when he walked out the door. And for the first time since this started, I let him go. The days blurred after that. Morgan stopped answering my texts, stopped showing up at my door. It was as if he had erased me from his life completely, like I had been nothing more than a detour, a mistake to be forgotten. I should have hated him for it. But all I could think about was the way he had looked at me that last night, like he wanted to stay but didn't know how. Weeks passed, then a month, then two, and then one night I saw him. I was walking home from work when I spotted him across the street, sitting in an outdoor cafe. Emily was with him. She was laughing, her hand resting over his, and for a split second, I let myself believe he was happy. That maybe, just maybe, I had been the only one left haunted by what we had done. But then, Morgan looked up, and his eyes met mine. It was only a second, a flicker of recognition, of something unspoken, before he looked away. And in that moment, I knew he wasn't okay. Neither of us were. But some things weren't meant to be spoken aloud. Some mistakes you just have to carry. I turned and walked away, letting the past settle behind me like dust in the wind. Morgan wasn't mine to hold on to. He never had been. And maybe, just maybe, that was the real tragedy of it all.